So who is asking the questions here? We have lots of questions, too many questions, but who is going to be asking them?
Jachinma, we won't be asking the questions. You can just the ones we had sent you earlier. Should we go through those? Okay.
Okay. I will read out the question. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so the first question was, how does one stay mindful at all times, even under stressful situations? So basically the point is, we have to just practice being mindful. You know, we are habituated to being distracted. And so we have to train our minds during more peaceful times to be more aware. I mean, there's no hope that during stressful times we can be aware if we're not aware during ordinary times. You know, I mean, we have to, like any skill, you have to practice and practice. So gradually the mind learns how to be more present, you know, under all circumstances. But it's a matter of training. So during the day, as well as during our formal times, we should try to remember to bring our attention back to the present moment, to what we are doing, what we are thinking, what we are saying. And then the mind begins to learn how to do it and become more at ease with being present, with more being aware. And then even during very stressful situations, the mind is ready to stay calm and centered and able to deal with the situation as skillfully as possible. So it's all a matter of practice. I mean, everything is a matter of practice. It doesn't just happen like that. You have to do it again and again and again. And basically, we need to reprogram our mind from being distracted to being non-distracted. So the second question is, how does one deal with a constant thought while meditating or otherwise, which acts as a trigger for a chain of thoughts, distractions, and emotions that follow? So sometimes this happens. We have some thought which keeps coming up again and again and again. So first thing is, when we are in our formal meditation, that we should relax, just relax. Then bring the full weight of one's attention to this thought. Just looking at the thought itself without any kind of elaboration, just release it, let it go, right? Or also one can, when these thoughts come up, make a determination to bring the attention back to the focus of one's practice, for example, one's breath. The thought comes up and we notice the thought and we say, okay, back to the breath. And in that way, we overcome that thought by our practice. So either way, both, that we disregard the thought and we get back to the practice, or at sometimes we take the thought itself and make that the object of our practice. Just look at it and see it and explore it. And in that way also, then just release it. We don't have to follow it. We have to train the mind how to be present without following up with thoughts. Number 3 says, how can we apply impermanence to help one overcome a recurring unfulfilled dream or desire? Well, I don't know about impermanence, but if the dream or desire is unattainable, then let it go. We cannot attain everything we wish for. I mean, that is just not possible. Some things we can attain, some things we cannot attain. If we cannot attain it, then let it go. And be grateful for what we have attained. I mean, everybody's got something they can be pleased about. And so focus on that, and instead of just endlessly desiring something which is not attainable, which is a waste of time and a waste of energy. We have to be in control of our own minds and not just be controlled by our minds. So if we see thoughts and feelings which are not helpful, which are not useful, then we recognize this is not helpful, this is not useful. And we make the determination to release it, let it go. Don't keep holding on to it. So then number 4 says, what is it that one can do if such thoughts constantly interrupt one's practice? And how does one deal with the emotions that arise because of such thoughts? So you have to relax the mind. Don't get tensed up. Observe the thoughts without being caught up in them. Thoughts are just thoughts. They're not me, they're not mine, they're not solid and real. They're just mental, so if we don't observe the thoughts, then we become slaves to the thoughts. And who is running the thought process? The ego. The ego is naturally ignorant. So we shouldn't let the ego decide on everything we're going to think, because the ego doesn't have a clue. So then we have to take control of our own minds through being mindful. Mindful awareness, which really looks at what's going on inside ourselves. And so we're not dragged along, and we don't identify with our thoughts thinking this is me. We see these are just thoughts. And we can, if we are mindful and aware, then we can change the pattern of our thoughts. And as we become more aware of them, of themselves, they begin to transform. So, as to thinking, apparently the Sufis have something called the 3 gateways. And what you ask is it true? Is it useful or necessary? And is it kind? So when thoughts, especially recurring thoughts, come up, investigate. Is this true, what I'm thinking? Is it even useful or necessary? And is it helpful? Is it kind? And if the answer is no, then drop it. Don't just keep repeating endlessly. Become the master of our mind instead of slaves of our mind. This is the whole point. So then it says, as I practice and study, I feel divided into 2 selves. One self, which I present to my friends and family, and one self, which is contradictory to my way of being and guides me to the realizing of my Buddha nature. How to address this bifurcation of the self? Well, we need to practice at all times mindful awareness with a kind heart. And that we present to our family and our friends. And it's also the means of bringing us to the path of awakening, to the path of enlightenment. So there's no bifurcation. We're under all circumstances, we should try to be more mindfully aware and more open-hearted and kind. So this is the essence of the practice. The essence of the practice is to cultivate our loving awareness under all situations, to be mindful and to be kind. So then there's no separation. I don't see where there are 2 selves here. Our whole practice is to be mindfully aware and to be kind under all circumstances, whether we're with the family and friends, whether we're sitting in formal meditation, we are cultivating our awareness. So, no two, only one. I find that it's more difficult practicing with family. So sometimes, instead of practicing compassion, it leads to numbness. I feel they are stuck in one behavior pattern, like insecurity, misunderstanding things, etc., which will be harmful for them. If we try to help them or understand them, it's not very welcoming from their end. How can I deal with this? Well, I would say, quoting the Bible, judge not that ye be not judged. Stop judging your family or trying to change them. You know, we are all the owners of our own karma, our own actions. And so use your family to cultivate your own paramita, your generosity, your ethics, your patience. Cultivate your family for opening your heart to how they are and not how you would like them to be. Don't try to change them. What we need to change is our own reactions to them. I mean, that we can change. Changing other people, very dubious. And naturally, they resent it. Why should they listen to what you have to say? If you really want to influence your family and friends, then it's by your behavior. If you yourself are nicer and kinder and more patient, they might get interested in, you know, you're nicer nowadays. What are you doing? But merely by trying to be the exemplar and telling them what they're doing wrong, that will never work. They just get fed up with you and think, well, now she's taken up religion. So leave them alone and be concerned with your own inner change, because that's, you know, that's, we can do something, you know. And in the same time, lighten up. Don't be so serious, you know. Don't take everything so seriously. Have a sense of humor, you know, and realize that your family, your friends, they are the practice. That's where we're going to cultivate all these paramitas and all these qualities of the heart, and loving people for how they are and not for how you would like them to be or how you think they should be. Just how they are with all their idiosyncrasies, love them anyway. And that's the point. You know, we have to open our heart towards everybody. And your good example can do so much more to show them than, you know, anything you have to say. And if they're not interested in how you behave, so what? Be happy, love them. And that's enough. Don't try to change anybody. Just try to transform your own mind. Despite the fact that I understand death intellectually and know that it is imminent, I'm still unable to get over the fear of loss and uncertainty. How does one learn how to accept this and make peace with one's own self? So, of course, you know, the Buddha himself always said that if we only had one meditation or, you know, practice to think about, then to think about death was the most useful. Not in order to make us morbid, but in order for us to appreciate life while we have it. I mean, this is the point, that now, right now, we are not dead. And now we have the opportunity. Recently, in fact, yesterday, I received an email from a young man to whom I had given refuge at some point and precepts. And he said that he was suddenly taken with a very bad infection and had gone to hospital. And the doctors there were very gloomy about his prognosis and thought he might very well die because it was a very virulent infection which he had. And so, I mean, he's a young man, maybe in mid-20s. And he lay there thinking, okay, I'm going to die. My goodness. I took refuge, I took presets, but still I'm wasting my life. All the things I've been doing since then, all the social contacts and all the things, well, it gave some kind of temporary pleasure, but what use is it now? I'm going to die. The only thing that I can take with me is the Dharma, and that I've neglected and put off. And so he made a vow while he was lying on the hospital bed that from now on he would really put the Dharma at the center of his life instead of just, when he had a bit of time. So I said, this is wonderful, fantastic that you had this messenger of death to remind us to make the most of our life while we have it. And that's the point. Death itself is a great adventure. I mean, now we're going to find out what really happens. Everybody has their own version of what's going to happen when we die. Now we're going to find out. So I think that's exciting. But it's also, death is just a natural part of the journey. It's not something fearful. And all meetings end in parting, as the Buddha said. We have to accept that loss is natural. And it's happening all the time. I mean, look at this time with pandemic. So much loss. Some people have lost their whole families. But it happens again and again. It's a recurring theme. If we look back on history, plagues and epidemics and natural disasters, So sit and meditate on this. Sit and meditate on this, the naturalness of loss and death and how it's perfectly okay. It's what happens. And really think about it and meditate on it until it leaves the head, the intellect, and really enters down into our heart. Because it's only when things get into our heart that things actually transform our view and we begin to see things in a different way. So in the meantime, we're all practicing. And as they say, practice makes perfect. So keep practicing, If we do metta meditation and send ourselves loving kindness and loving kindness to everyone else, gradually, we would just begin to understand things. So when we meditate, it's a great relief to recognize that death is everywhere, I mean, why shouldn't it be? Life is by nature insecure. There is no security in life. The only security is to feel secure in insecurity, to recognize that life is very unpredictable, but to be at peace within that and not expect things to go the way we always expect things to go. So in that way, we have the feeling that whatever happens, we can cope. We will manage it. If right now, step by step by step, we manage and we respond skillfully, in the future, whatever happens, we will also be able to cope. That's the point. So just stay one step at a time. Right now, I'm making good use of this present lifetime. I'm trying to develop my awareness, trying to develop my kindness and generosity, my ethical conduct. I'm trying to do what I can to be of benefit to myself, but also of benefit to others. Then if we take care of the present moment, the future will take care of itself as it becomes the present moment. So don't worry about death. It's the most natural thing on earth. And if we have led a relatively good and ethical life and not harmed people and maybe done our best to help them, nothing to fear at death. Really, we'll be fine. How how do we control our reactions such that we respond and not just react? Well, again, this is all about being mindful and in control of our mind. I mean, and our emotions, instead of just reacting blindly, something happens and we, if we practice again and again, responding skillfully to events, finally it becomes spontaneous. We don't have to try. Naturally, our responses will be skillful. But it's all a matter of practice, again and again and again. I mean, if we do, for example, if we do metta meditation, giving loving kindness to ourselves, forgiving ourselves, making friends with ourselves, and then spreading that outwards to those we love, those we don't love, and out towards all the world. If we do that again and again and again, it actually does make new neural pathways in the brain. I mean, they have discovered that that is actually true. And then when things occur, which otherwise would have made us very upset and angry and lit up that part of the brain which has to do with irritation and annoyance and anger, having done metta meditations in our practice, then in fact, when annoying circumstances arise, instead of lighting up those parts of the brain to do with anger, it lights up that part of the brain to do with compassion and loving kindness. Even in very ordinary people, I mean, it's not something which you have to, spend 20 years meditating in isolation in order to get. Very ordinary people, if they apply themselves, even for a short time every day, to doing metta meditations, they will find that when annoying circumstances arise, spontaneously, they will not respond negatively. They will, to their own surprise, discover that they're not upset, they're not annoyed. They just feel sorry and wish the other person to be well and happy. So like that, but it practice again and again and again and again until it just becomes natural. That's all. I mean, Buddhists always talk about practice. And so that's the point. Like a musician has to practice again and again and again and again and again, playing over and over and over until finally the music plays through them. But it's not going to play through them if they haven't spent hours and days and weeks and months and years practicing. So how to speak of the mind? But the mind can be rewired. Our heart can be involved. That's the good thing, that we can change our negative responses into very positive responses. But like everything else, it takes practice, right? So I come across some internal conflict in my contemplations. One such conflict is relating to compassion. I want to live my life with as little harm that I can do to my environment, other creatures, and life forms. This is a strict personal choice and reflects in all my life decisions. But secretly, I want other people, read the entire world, to do this too. But I witness cruelty and destruction everywhere. I also feel that I need to respect others' choices wholeheartedly. Sometimes I hold on to this want, need, regret, anger, and all such feelings that result from this expectation. I want to free myself from this expectation. Is it possible? And if yes, how? Well, I mean, first of all, we have to recognize this is samsara. And samsara, by its very nature, is unsatisfactory, right? And also the minds of the beings who are inhabiting this planet, and especially humans, are dominated by the three poisons of greed and hatred and delusion, along with pride and envy and fear and all these other things, which are all centered around the ego, all centered around me, the cherishing self, the self-cherishing mind, which then reacts with greed or anger or fear and all sorts of negative feelings. We are dominated with this in our minds. This is the problem. So, I mean, it's always been that way. It was that way in the past, it is now, and surely it will ever be that way. So there's no way that we can just change the consciousness of all the beings inhabiting this planet. No way, no way. But we can change our own hearts gradually to become more compassionate and understanding. And in this way, maybe we can have some influence on those who wish to be influenced. If they don't wish to be influenced, then they will carry on with their own karma. So when you see people doing bad things, instead of being angry, you should feel so sorry, because they're making terrible karma. They're causing problems for others. They're causing problems for themselves. They are making very bad karma, which at some point they're going to have to deal with. How sad that they are so caught up in this very negative states of mind, because we are all the owners of our own karma. I think this is very important. And as long as we're under the domination of these poisonous states of mind, nothing much is going to change. So this is why when we look around, instead of feeling anger and frustration and annoyance, we just feel tremendous compassion. Because with all our so-called intelligence, we have very little wisdom. And, you know, that's the, you know, in this day and age, look at what we're doing to our own mind through all the, you know, technology, which we're so addicted to, and through the media and through our interrelationships. And then from that, our family, our workplace, society, and the whole planet. I mean, you know, we are more highly educated than we have ever been, and yet never were we acting so stupidly. How sad. How sad. It's not a matter of being angry at it. It's a matter of just feeling tremendous genuine compassion for our ignorance, and therefore feeling, well, we start where we are, which is with ourselves, and you know how to deal with our own mind, our own negative emotions as they come up, and how to transform those into positive. That's the work we have to do. Every time I sit down to think and sit silently with my thoughts, I find myself eventually crying and laughing uncontrollably. The inevitability of pain and suffering is overwhelming, and I cannot help but laugh and cry at the same time, which sometimes scares me with its intensity. So what should I do? Well, reading that, I thought, every time? That doesn't sound so good. Find out what's the real cause why you're having these very strong emotional reactions like this. Then just relax, look at the mind. What is causing the laughter and the tears? What is the cause of the suffering, and where is it? In the body or in the mind? The mindful awareness is not laughing or crying. So cultivate that mindful awareness, which is our inner equanimity and peace, right? So look at this. If these reactions are coming up every time, there's something out of balance. So cultivate your inner equanimity and look at the laughter, the tears, and what is actually causing it, so that we begin to understand what is happening inside our own mind and why it is triggering these strong emotions. How to inculcate meditation practice in your daily life when you're impatient? Well, I would say just do short sessions, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, not more. And don't expect to become calm and clear in a week. You know, meditation takes months, years of practice. So if you're too impatient, you expect too much, and you're very goal orientated, then you're just going to give up, because it takes time to transform, to genuinely transform. So then that's very sad for you. You know, if you give up, that's your loss. So therefore, try to develop a mind which accepts what is happening as it happens, without any expectations and without any judgments of good or bad. Just open the heart to accept whatever comes. Try to maintain mindfulness as much as possible during the day, whenever you remember. And if the mindfulness only lasts for a few seconds, that's okay. A few seconds, again and again and again. And don't give up. Relax. How does one stop the same thoughts from coming again and again, especially nowadays? So I just said about that before, you know, just relax, watch the thoughts. You know, so many of our thoughts, when we watch our thoughts, one of the problems is that our thoughts are so boring. They're like a rerun of the same old TV soap opera, which we didn't really much enjoy at the beginning, the first time we heard it. And then we're running it again and again and again. It's so boring, the mind, so repetitive, very rarely creative. So become more interested in the observing, in the watching, than in what is being watched. You know, don't worry about the program. Be more conscious of being conscious. That's the essence of the practice. So that by mindfulness, one sees how repetitive the mind is, and because of that, we can change the program. We don't always have to watch the same program. Once we are aware of observing the mind, then we are more in charge of the situation, and we can say, we've done that one already. That was really boring. Let's think of something else. And we can. We are normal beings in samsara. Indeed. I run a business for a living, and I'm a coach, and transforming others got me interested in learning about the Dharma to transform myself. While I am in the learning process, a constant thought occurs to me on how much should I push myself in my business or in becoming successful as a woman entrepreneur, or go deeper into the Dharma to lead the samsaric life. I sometimes am in the middle and struggle to find a strong reason to stay on either side. Kindly help me with your answer. So I would say, unless you are genuinely willing to let go and renounce, and that's not so easy in the modern day and age. Otherwise, you really have to make your daily life your practice. Everybody really needs to not put the Dharma at at the periphery of our life. When we've got a bit of time, then we'll sit and we'll do some practice, but really make our daily life our practice. Otherwise, nothing really is going to change. So then we can do formal practice and some, retreats if we have the time and the opportunity. That's very important. That helps us to stabilize and go deeper. But we have to take that and use it in our day-to-day life. So since your job is as a coach, then it's an excellent opportunity to integrate your practice with your daily life. There's nothing wrong with becoming successful at your work or what you are interested in, provided you remain honest and kind and as mindful as possible. Then your work and your practice become united, and we develop kindness and insight in our relationship with others. I mean, there's so many qualities which are needed, such as generosity and patience and understanding of others and so forth. So many qualities which we need other people to develop. And without them, we can fool ourselves into thinking we're much more spiritually advanced than we really are. When we get back into the world, then that puts it into perspective where we're really at. But the other people are helping us to develop these qualities. So there's no need to think that they're an obstacle to our Dharma life. They are the Dharma life. So to have time for formal sitting, it's possible to do retreats, and then to take what one answer understood and one's insights and make use of them in our daily life to benefit others as well as ourselves, then it becomes reciprocal. Others help us, we help others. So that's beautiful. No problem. How to encourage the development and spreading of the wholesome positive states of mind, such as gratitude, contentment, and metta. Well, this is the point, we have to recognize that genuine happiness, not just secular outer happiness depending on pleasure and nice circumstances, but genuine inner joy it's an inner state brought about by our cultivation of positive states of mind. We are not going to have inner joy and at the same time feel angry or jealous. We will find only when we feel that inner joy spontaneously, we also feel great love and great kindness and compassion naturally arises with that. So in order to cultivate that inside us, we need to cultivate our positive states of mind. So if we want to be happy and make others around us also happy, then we have to practice the cultivation of positive states of mind. And when we have negative states of mind, we recognize them. I'm angry, I'm annoyed, I'm irritated. I really like that. Wow, I want that. Greed, anger, pride, jealousy, whatever, fear. We recognize this is a negative state of mind, which makes me uncomfortable. It is not beneficial. And so right now, I am going to change it. And if we have cultivated our awareness and also our metta, we can change it. Of course we can. The thing is just recognize it as soon as possible after it's arisen, and instead of feeding our anger or our greed, we say, no, this is not useful, this is not beneficial state of mind, I'm going to change it. And then we change it. I mean, who's in control? We shouldn't let our ignorant ego run the show, because the ego can be a very good servant, but it's a terrible master. So, of course, people must be allowed to grieve the loss of a loved one. We can give sympathy for their loss. If the one who has died was a good person or had been suffering with illness, oh no, that's the answer to this question. What's the question?
Jetsunma, may I help in reading out the questions? Would it help?
You can if you want to. We're on
Okay.
question number 15, as far as, well,
Yeah.
I labeled them so I would understand it. So they're saying, what are the ways or techniques that we can use in order to support a friend or a family member grieving from a loss of a loved one, especially when at this time of the pandemic, where we cannot be there presently? That's the one I've got up to. So the answer to that, of course, is again that people naturally they're going to grieve. I mean, it's, you know, to pretend that, you know, now I'm a Buddhist practitioner, so, you know, understanding death and loss, I'm not going to grieve. I mean, that's unrealistic, and it just suppresses the grief. It doesn't, you know, the grief should come out. And so in their grief, we should, you know, give sympathy, because we understand that they're in pain, they're really hurting inside. They've lost their loved ones, and this is very painful. But then if someone who died was, you know, basically a good person, nothing, they hadn't done horrible, or if they had been suffering from some illness, you know, some long illness, which, you know, was painful and they weren't going to recover from, then perhaps we can remind the bereaved that the departed is actually probably much better off now. They're probably perfectly happy. And they have gone onwards and upwards without the difficulty of their sick body. And so at a certain time, even though we can grieve, we shouldn't cling and say, why did you leave me? How could you leave me? And so forth, because this makes it very difficult for the one who has gone on, who has died, because then they feel guilty themselves. And sometimes they hang around because they feel that, you know, they want to do something to help, but it doesn't help them on their own upward journey. So although we can grieve, we can at the same time allow them to go. Say, well, I really loved you and I'm so sorry you've gone, but it's okay, you can go and please carry on. So also the people that are left, encourage them at this time of loss to try to make some merit on behalf of the one who has died, such as giving charity on their behalf, or having pujas performed, or anything that, you know, you feel would be beneficial for the person who is now in the intermediate state in the bardo, that they will be happy to see being performed on their behalf. But then also encourage them to recognize that even though it's very hard for them to accept, you know, death is a natural process, and, you know, even for those left behind. So although we cannot take away their grief, we can give them our understanding and our compassion and encourage them to, you know, themselves go on and not get stuck in their grief and their loss. So for both sides, for those that have died and have gone on, and also for those who are left behind, after a reasonable period of grief, then they should allow that pain, that wound to heal, and not just keep scratching it to deepen the wound, because that doesn't benefit them, doesn't benefit those who have died. So we're just there to help them, anything that they need. The ones who are left behind, just show them our, you know, we really feel for them, but at the same time, gradually encourage them to go on. Are you going to read the next question?
Yes. In a world that promotes and rewards self-obsession, how does one remain committed to the path of selflessness without being exhausted or defeated?
Well, you know, when I read that, I thought, well, personally, I think the path of self-obsession is what leads to exhaustion and defeat. You know, that's why so many businessmen and self-made millionaires become alcoholics and drug users, actually. I mean, I knew a young woman who was part of a family in America, which is synonymous with wealth. And she said that the one good thing about being born in that family, where, you know, they're all very, very, very wealthy and also, you know, entrepreneurs and whatever, she said, was to recognize that just being wealthy doesn't make for happiness. She said most of her family were alcoholics, and the only ones who were happy were those who were busy being philanthropists and giving away their wealth and getting involved in very many different social activities. They were happy, they had a purpose in life. But the others who were so busy accumulating and getting more and more and more just ended up totally depressed. And as I say, often as alcoholics or drug users. So, however, just because one's on a spiritual path doesn't mean you have to be a failure. If one has a profession which is meaningful, one can give one's energy and intelligence to succeeding. Merely saying selflessness does not make one selfless. So, you know, she says, how committed to the path of selflessness? Well, merely being selfless, you know, who wants to be egoless? Who wants to be egoless? The ego. It's not so easy. My own Lama Kamta Rinpoche was very efficient and very well organized. And he created in exile, you know, as a refugee, he created his monastery and his lay community. They built houses, he liaised with government officials. And in general, he was very, very busy. He was also an artist. And he was highly incompetent, but he was also a great Dzogchen master. So, you know, just because you're on the spiritual path doesn't mean you have to be, you know, a failure in life. You can be highly successful on all planes, but at the same time, from an attitude of being more mindful, more present, more honest, more kind. That doesn't mean you have to, you know, be a loser. I mean, in fact, if one has genuine integrity in one's work, then one is much more likely to succeed. And then what you do with the process of your success, you know, is in conformity with your beliefs. So, you know, you can, it's not a self-obsession, but it's, if you have, for example, a talent, which is, you know, very well endowed with certain qualities, why not make the most of those qualities? I mean, they are the result of efforts which were made in past lives. So make the most of them and be happy for that, you know, and use it for the benefit of oneself and for the benefit of others. If you have a business, then be kind to your employees, make sure your negotiations are honest, and with whatever is your profits, then use them skillfully for the benefit of society and so forth. Why not? A friend of mine, she's a very good friend of a financier, and he made lots of money, and he's, you know, he's a millionaire. And then at some point he also felt, well, I have enough now, but I really like working in finance. I don't want to give up. So he's created this whole organization where they are working on the stock market, and all the profits which they get, the person who has done that within his employees, they get to choose which charity they want to give it to. So they use all their profits, apart from that, to maintain the organization. All the extra profits they give away to various charities, whichever one they fancy. And so they have that motivation too. They benefit themselves and they benefit others. And he's highly successful. So, success doesn't mean that you just have to be greedy and self-obsessed in that way. We can still succeed and benefit the world at the same time.
The next question. I have found that in this past year, when so many people have become afraid of illness and death, and we see so much destruction around us, I have lost my fear of death completely. I feel nothing at the thought of my own death or that of others, though I try to appropriately show empathy and compassion as required. To be honest, it frightens me sometimes that I am this unaffected. How do we know whether we are acting from a lack of caring and compassion, or whether we are correctly moving past attachment to the body?
That's a good question. Obviously, it is good to lose our fear of sickness and death. That removes the huge burden which so many people carry around with them. If we are not afraid of death, then, we can face whatever comes with equanimity. But as you say, it is important not to lose the empathy that understands others' fear and pain. I mean, this is the point, that it is indeed, she's right, not to be worrying about whether that numbness is not a good thing, that something has died inside, our empathy. But, the Dharma itself is like a boat, and it rides the waves of samsara. It goes up and down. But those waves which drive the boat across the ocean of samsara to the further shore. So it's the fact that there is this pain, there is this suffering, there is this fear, and using the Dharma to understand that, which helps propel us across to the other shore. So we are no longer submerged by those waves. This is the importance of the Dharma. We are using the waves to move forward, but we're no longer drowning in those waves. And so that is why the Dharma is like a refuge. It's a boat which rides the waves of samsara. We don't get rid of the waves, but we make use of the waves to move forward. So to be constantly drowned in others' grief doesn't help them. If every time, we are just overwhelmed by too much emotion, that also is not beneficial. It doesn't help others, it doesn't help ourselves. So we need to develop that inner equanimity, which conjoins our insight into how things really are, along with our compassion. Compassion is very important. Compassion is feeling with others and wishing to help them. Empathy is just feeling with others and can sometimes be too much. But compassion allows us to act. How can I help you in this situation? If one can help, one can help. If one cannot help, one cannot help. But to keep the heart open while at the same time not being caught up in fear. Fear is not necessary. Compassion is open and accepting of everything.
The question is, how to deal with low self-esteem?
Well, of course, everybody has that problem. So I would say, practice metta. Because so low self-esteem comes from not liking oneself, thinking oneself is unworthy, thinking that, maybe things which you heard as a small child, and your parents said bad things to you, and then you're carrying it with you, or your teachers criticized you, and then we take that into our heart, and we look at ourselves and we think we're worthless, we're no good, we're useless, we're a failure. This is not helpful, because it's just ego. Low self-esteem is not humility. It's not going beyond the ego. It's just the ego which is in pain. And as I often say, the ego is perfectly happy to be miserable, because it's still thinking me, even if it's poor me, poor me, poor me. So metta, the Buddha said, we start by shamatha meditation, watching the breath that calms the mind, and then doing this loving kindness towards ourselves. Metta really means to become a friend. So we become a friend with ourselves. We make friends with ourselves, thinking how nice it would be if we could be, if we could be happy. Wouldn't that be nice? Not suffering. And so giving this friendliness towards oneself, and to remember that we all have Buddha nature. The nature of the mind is completely perfect. It's only our conceptual thinking mind which looks like it's not working so well. But our essential nature is completely pure, completely perfect. There's nothing wrong with us. We are the fullness of wisdom and compassion in our true nature. We are Tara. But we don't know it. That's our problem. So it's important to give ourselves a sense of appreciation and listen to that critical voice which says that we're no good, because that voice is not true. That voice is lying to us. And we never to say to ourselves what we would not say to our best friend. If we talked to our friends in the way that maybe we talk to ourselves, we would very soon have no friends. And so why do we say to ourselves, send ourselves messages we would not give to others? So listen to those messages and say, no, we're going to change the message. This is not true. It's not right. And we are going to give ourselves kindness, like a small child. Thich Nhat Hanh talks a lot about healing the inner child. So if you have low esteem, I would suggest you look at Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings on healing the inner child, because this inner child is the one which is suffering and results in our sense of low self-esteem. We all can do anything we want if we really want to do it. So we have to encourage ourselves. If we don't encourage ourselves, who will encourage us? So cultivate loving kindness, cultivate compassion, cultivate joy. Think of the goodness in us, not just all the things which we can't do or haven't done. Think of all the good that we could do. That joyfulness, mudita, is also very, very important. And try to do a practice which is short but consistent. And during the day, also keep an inner sense of poise. Visualize yourself as Tara or whoever, and see, if you were Tara, how would you speak? How would you think? How would you act? Because we are Tara.
In terms of global politics, there's a rise in intolerance and suffering for people. The wealth gap has increased phenomenally, and so has injustice. In the Indian context, governance is at its worst in my lifetime. How do I keep faith when loss and injustice is all invasive?
This is samsara. This is the nature of samsara, is dukkha. The nature of samsara is unsatisfactory. It was so in the past. Read history. And nothing fundamentally has really changed because we as human beings have not fundamentally really changed. We just have bigger, more powerful means of implementing our ideas. We're still as greedy, as angry, as self-cherishing as ever. So this is why we need to cultivate our inner resources and look at the world with eyes of love and compassion, despite everything, you know, and not just get focused on what is negative. There is so much goodness. This is very important. There is so much goodness. I mean, even during this time of pandemic, people have reached out, have even during this pandemic, people have reached out to help others beyond their means. They've set up all sorts of organizations, temporary organizations to help those who are most affected. And, you know, all the medical staff have been absolute heroes and heroines. I mean, absolutely amazing. People have inner goodness. And during times of great stress and difficulties outwardly, that arouses inner compassion and generosity and goodness. So don't just focus on what's wrong. Also focus on what's right. Because there's a lot of beauty in the world still, and a lot of very, very beautiful people in the world still. And we, despite the fact that we are controlled by our negative emotions, still there is goodness, still there is kindness, generosity, and tremendous compassion and love and real service to others. So don't just look on the gloomy side. But samsara is samsara, and it's going to continue being samsara. And, you know, within that, this is where we practice. I mean, it's, you know, if it's too easy, then it's easy to also become kind of complacent. But when life gives us lots of challenges, that's when we have the opportunity to strengthen our inner qualities. And this is the reason why the human birth is considered so precious, because it does have challenges and it is not perfect. And therefore, we have the opportunity to cultivate those qualities needed to transform the outer chaos into inner wisdom and compassion. So be grateful for where we are and for having the mind you have, and really work at trying to transform the heart so that we are able to deal with whatever comes our way with intelligence and with genuine love and compassion. So we will leave it there for now because we have come up with our hour. Maybe some other time we can finish the questions. Just keep working at it. That's the important thing. And using your daily life as your practice. It's not something which keeps us from practice. It is the actual practice.
Thank you, Jetsunma. And I would like now to please to request Professor to give a vote of thanks, Professor Duker.
Mahesh sir?
Mahesh sir.
Again, I think we
Well, it doesn't matter. You can do it.
Hello.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. There was some technical issue. So let me, on the onset, thank Jetsunma for her session. It was really nice to hear her after a long time. Last year, we could not really organize this session because of pandemic, but I'm really happy that we are going to have it this time in a question answer session. But I hope that, I know that Jasima basically has now decided to stop the teachings, but it would be also nice to really get that at some point, maybe not in a very large scale, but in a smaller scale like this also would be really encouraging and motivating. Because as Jasunma said, I mean, we really need to practice it again and again. And this is something which we also have to tell our minds again and again, what we need to do and how we need to proceed. So such teachings, I mean, they really kind of act as reminders all the time. And I think we really need these kind of reminders because as Jasunma says, our minds, I mean, they do not really change overnight. And we really need to kind of do this practice, not just practicing what we hear, but also the practice of listening. So therefore, in Buddhism, we say that it is also important to listen to the Dhamma time to time, because that is something which always keeps on the right track and does not allow us to kind of lose our way. So Jatsuma, thank you very much on behalf of the department and on behalf of all the students of the course and also on behalf of the WCCL. We are really happy that we could meet even though virtually. I just would like to share with all our colleagues and students here that pretty soon, I mean, next week mostly, we will have the announcement for the new batch of the course, of all the other programs of the department as well. So please share this with all your friends and colleagues. And if you really wish that they should really take this course or any other courses, you're most welcome to do that. So we'll share the announcement with all of you, and I think Charu can do this as a nodal point. And I request all of you to take this message further. So I really thank Charu and Ellen for organizing this question and answer session. And it shows, I mean, that everyone is thinking within their hearts and trying to kind of imbibe the Buddha's teaching in their own lives, and would like to make it as fruitful for not only for themselves but also for others. So with these words, I once again thank everyone and pay my reverence to Jetsunma. I wish that we meet some point, and many greetings to you and all the nuns back there in the nunnery, and please convey our deepest love and respect for them. And so thank you very much for accepting this and being with us this morning. So thank you, Getsuma. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, everybody. Lovely to see you.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, same here.
Thank you.
Look forward to being back with you all again at some point.
Yeah, please.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you, Jetsunma.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you once
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charu and Ellen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Duskar. We'll, for the ones who are here, we'll still just put up a short dedication on the screen, and I'll just read that out. Dedication prayer. Through all these actions I have now performed and all the virtues that I have now gained, may all the pain of every living being be wholly scattered and fully destroyed. For boundless multitudes of sentient beings, may I be the ground always of their life and be their source of varied sustenance. And thus, for each and everything that lives, extending to the limits of the sky, may I constantly be their source of life until they pass beyond every sorrow. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending.